Beaufort, South Carolina. October 1859. The tide is falling. The air tastes of salt and coming frost. At dusk, a plain pine coffin is carried past the forge of Amos M.O. Carver, blacksmith, husband, father of a daughter sold away 9 years earlier. The coffin is not for a funeral that has happened. It is for a death that has not yet come. M.O. Carver is still alive, still breathing, still swinging the hammer that built half the plantation's ironwork. The plantation owner ordered the coffin 6 weeks early, paid in full, delivered while Mo's heart still beat against his ribs. Mo did not cry out. He did not run. He simply wiped sweat from his brow, looked at the box, and whispered into the smoke of his forge. They think they can write my death before I live it. But I'm about to forge something they can never melt down. Beaufort County in 1859 was a place where water ruled and land begged. The sea islands stretched like broken fingers into the Atlantic. Long staple cotton grew so tall and fine it looked like white clouds caught in green stalks. Live oaks were Spanish moss like funeral veils. The creeks twisted dark and slow, carrying secrets between plantations no white man could follow. Oak Hollow Plantation sat on the edge of Port Royal Sound, where salt water met fresh water in a brackish line that changed every tide. The big house stood tall on brick piers, whitewashed and proud, windows catching the dying light like eyes that never blinked. But the real pulse of Oak Hollow beat lower. In the quarters of tabby cabins, in the smokehouse, in the praise house where feet moved in ring shouts until the stars grew tired. M.O. Carver had lived on Oak Hollow since he was 7. Born in 1806 in a cabin that no longer stood. Raised by a mother who taught him iron before she was sold away. His forge was his kingdom. 8 by 10 feet of heat and shadow. The anvil he had made himself from salvaged ship iron rang like a bell when he struck it. People said if M.O. forged it, the storm could not break it. He had a wife named Ruth. 26 years together, not on any paper the law would recognize, but in every quiet moment that mattered. They had lost their daughter Hannah to the auction block in 1850. She was 11. The wound never scarred over. It just bled slower. They had taken in a boy named Caleb, orphaned at 4 when his mother died of fever. Caleb was 9 now, small but quick, already learning the bellows. M.O. loved that boy like the son he could never get back. For months the sickness had been stealing Mo's breath. It started as a rasp after long days in the heat. Then the blood flecked on the rag. Then the nights when he sat upright, because lying down felt like drowning. He knew he was dying. The plantation doctor, a thin man named Dr. Langford, had come twice in the last month. He had whispered consumption to Colonel Elias Wade. M.O. heard it through the wall. He always heard everything. Colonel Elias Wade had inherited Oak Hollow 3 years earlier when his older brother died of yellow fever. Elias was 41, thin, bookish, more comfortable with ledgers than with people. He kept the plantation running through precision, not cruelty. But precision can be cruel in its own way. The cotton market had collapsed. The Charleston factor, a man named Gideon Holt, held a note for $4,200. The note had a clause. Unpaid by Christmas, Holt could claim any and all assets, including people. Elias Wade was calculating every day. He needed cash. He needed it fast. And Mo Carver, the blacksmith whose work kept the gins turning, was valued at $875 on the last appraisal. Alive, Mo was worth money. Dead on the books, he was a loss. But if the tax rolls showed Mo died in October, while he kept forging until the end, then Elias could keep the labor, claim the death credit, and settle the debt without the legal risk of selling a dying man. The coffin was the cleanest solution. The coffin arrived on a Tuesday morning when the first frost was still clinging to the marsh grass. Mo was sharpening a plow blade when the wagon rolled up. Two boys from the quarters, Jonah and Levi, carried the long pine box past the forge. They kept their eyes down. Mo kept sharpening. The whetstone sang against steel. He watched Colonel Wade stand on the back porch. The colonel gave one short nod toward the tool shed. The box disappeared inside, 30 feet from the cabin where Mo and Ruth slept. That night Ruth pressed her forehead to Mo's chest and whispered, "They ordered your box while you're still breathing, Mo. What kind of man does that?" Mo stared at the ceiling beams he had replaced after the '47 hurricane. He answered quietly, "The kind who needs me gone on paper, but still working till the last spark." The next morning Mo stood in the tool shed staring at the coffin. It was plain pine. Iron handles. Fitted lid. Solid work. He ran his scarred fingers along the inside. Then he did something no one expected. He reached into the false bottom of his anvil, a secret compartment he had forged years earlier, and pulled out a thin sheet of iron he had been saving. He heated it over the coals until it glowed dull red. Then, with hammer and cold chisel, he began to mark it. Not words yet, just lines. A map only he could read. Every night for the next 3 weeks, Mo worked in secret. While the quarters slept, he etched the truth onto thin iron plates no bigger than a man's palm. He recorded dates, conversations overheard from the forge, the exact amount the colonel had underreported on last year's tax list. The nights the colonel rode to the neighboring plantation to visit a woman whose husband was conveniently away. The fire in the cotton barn 3 years earlier that everyone blamed on lightning. But Mo had seen the colonel's lantern near the barn that night. He etched it all in simple, powerful letters. The way he spoke, clear enough for any honest eye. He signed each plate. When the last plate was finished, he sealed them inside the false bottom of the coffin itself, the one place no white man would ever look twice. He closed the lid. Then he looked at Ruth in the moonlight and said, "If they bury me in this box, make sure the plates go with the ferryman Ezra. Tell him the current knows where to carry them." Ruth didn't cry. She simply nodded and said, "The current will carry them, Mo. And one day somebody gone read what you wrote." Colonel Wade grew restless. He started watching Mo too closely. He asked the overseer every morning, "How much work can the blacksmith still do?" Mo kept hammering, kept coughing blood into the marsh when no one was looking, kept smiling at little Caleb when the boy brought him water. But inside, something was shifting. One night the pain was so bad he dropped to his knees beside the forge and whispered to the fire, "I shaped their gates. I shaped their anchors. I shaped their world. And they want to erase me before I'm even gone." Ruth found him there. She held him while he shook. For the first time in 26 years, Mo cried. Not for himself. For Caleb. For every child who would grow up thinking their grandfather died quietly. That was the moment he decided the plates were not enough. He would make one more. A final plate. A message so sharp it could cut through time. The night Mo etched the last plate. The wind off the sound howled like it knew what was coming. He worked by the light of a single lantern, hands trembling. He wrote about the night their daughter Hannah was sold. The exact words the colonel had spoken to the trader. "Take the girl. She's strong. She'll bring good money. He wrote about the nights he had heard the colonel crying in the study when he thought no one was listening, crying because he knew he was becoming the kind of man his father had warned him never to be. He wrote the truth no white man on that island wanted to face. You can own my body. You can sell my children. You can order my coffin while I still breathe. But you cannot own what I remember. And what I remember, I have put in iron. Iron does not forget. He signed it with his blood, a single drop pressed into the soft iron while it was still warm. Then he hid the final plate inside the lining of Caleb's favorite fishing net. He kissed Ruth's forehead and whispered, "If I don't make it to morning, tell Caleb his grandfather left him the truth. And the truth is heavier than any chain they ever put on us." Colonel Wade found out. Not everything, but enough. One of the boys who had carried the coffin whispered to the overseer that Mo had been inside the tool shed at night. The colonel ordered the shed searched. They found nothing. The coffin was still there, empty, waiting. The colonel stood over it in the moonlight and smiled. He told the overseer, "The blacksmith won't last another month. When he goes, we file the death certificate backdated to October. The books stay clean. The debt stays quiet." Mo heard every word from the shadows behind the forge. That night, he could not stop coughing blood. Ruth held him and whispered, "You did everything you could, Mo." He looked at her with eyes full of fire even as his body failed and said, "No, Ruth. I did everything they thought I couldn't." The pain came in waves now. Mo could no longer stand for long. He sat on the anvil and hammered slowly, each strike weaker than the last. One night, he collapsed beside the forge. The coals glowed like eyes watching him that he whispered to Ruth, "I thought I was strong enough to carry it all, but the weight is too much now." Ruth held him and cried for the first time since Hannah was sold. Caleb came in, small and scared. He took Mo's hand and said, "Don't leave us, Papa Mo." Mo looked at the boy and smiled through the pain. "I ain't leaving you, son. I'm just giving you something to carry when I'm gone." The colonel decided to speed things up. He told the doctor to prepare the death certificate. He told the overseer to watch Mo every minute. Mo knew the end was close. He could feel it in every breath. One night, he called Ruth and Caleb to the forge. He gave Caleb the fishing net with the hidden plate. He told Ruth, "When I'm gone, take the net to Ezra. Tell him the current will know where to take it." Ruth nodded, tears on her face. Mo looked at Caleb and said, "Remember this, boy. They can take your body. They can take your name. But they can't take what you carry in here." He touched Caleb's chest. "That's yours forever." Mo Carver died at dawn on November 23, 1859. He died holding Ruth's hand and Caleb's small fingers. His last words were for the boy. "Caleb, the fire always tells the truth. Listen to it." They buried him in the waiting coffin the next morning. Colonel Wade stood at a distance, satisfied. He never saw the ferry boat that slipped out on the outgoing tide that same afternoon. Ezra the ferryman carried the fishing net with the final iron plate hidden inside. He carried it all the way to Charleston. He gave it to a quiet, free black lawyer named Isaiah Freeman. Isaiah read the plates by lantern light for 3 nights. Then he wrote one letter, a single letter to Gideon Holt, the factor who held the colonel's debt. The letter did not threaten. It simply said, "Certain records have come into my possession concerning the administration of assets at Oak Hollow Plantation. Records written in iron. Records that do not lie. A private settlement might be in everyone's interest." Gideon Holt read the letter once. Then he called Colonel Wade to Charleston. No one knows exactly what was said in that room, but 7 days later the debt was reduced by more than half. No forced sale of people. No public scandal. All because of words forged in iron by a dying blacksmith who refused to let his life be erased. The Civil War came. The white folks fled Beaufort when the Union gunboats appeared. The people stayed. They worked the fields for themselves. They opened schools. They bought pieces of the land they had watered with their sweat for generations. Ruth and Caleb stayed on Sapelo. Ruth lived to see freedom. She lived to see Caleb grow up, marry, and have children of his own. Every year on November 23rd, the Gullah families of Beaufort still gather at the old burial ground. They sing the old songs. They tell the story of the blacksmith who was buried in a coffin that came too soon, and who used the time he had left to make sure the truth would live forever. Today, if you walk the old paths of Beaufort, you can still find pieces of Oak Hollow. The big house is gone. The quarters are ruins. But in a small museum on the island, there is a simple fishing net. Inside the lining, hidden unless you know exactly where to look, is one thin sheet of iron. The words are faded now, but they are still there. School children come and read them. Historians study them. And every year the descendants of Amos Carver gather and say his name out loud. Because some men are buried in pine boxes, and some men are buried in truth. Amos Carver chose the second. And truth. Truth has a way of outliving every master, every debt, and every coffin. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that the quietest hands can still forge the loudest truth, do one thing tonight. Tell someone a truth you've been carrying. Because somewhere, right now, another blacksmith is picking up his hammer and deciding what kind of legacy he will leave behind. Thank you for listening. This has been the true story of a coffin that came too soon, and a man who made sure it carried something heavier than a body. Good night.